In section 6 of this course, we're going to focus on creating artificial intelligence. That is how we can create NPC characters that think for themselves. In doing this, we'll need to see different topics and different subjects. Specifically, we'll look at state machines or finite state machines and how we can change between particular states. In this video, we're going to look at how to create path finding and navigation. To do this, we'll need to bake a navigation mesh, create NavMesgAgents, and configure the scene generally for path finding. In this section of the course, we're going to be taking a look at artificial intelligence. That is, the way that the computer can think for itself. So to achieve this, I've got this basic kind of scene here in front of me. I'm using this green capsule to represent the player character. In fact, I'm going to select the capsule here and just name that to player. And in fact, I'm also going to tag it as player, just to emphasize this is the player character. Now we also have another character over here in red, and this effectively is going to represent our NPC character. So I'm going to name that to NPC, and effectively it's going to represent our enemy character inside the level. If I click on the tags, you can see we don't really have a kind of tag for an enemy character. So I'm going to add a tag here for an enemy character. So I'm just going to call that enemy and grab the enemy character and tag that as enemy here. So we have a player and an enemy character. Now, if I press play on the toolbar, nothing in the scene really happens at all. We have a static player character and a static enemy character. Now, what I would really like is an enemy character that kind of meanders and roams around the level. And then if they see the player character, they rush to attack the player character. That effectively is what I want to achieve. That's artificial intelligence. And we need to get started at creating that. Now, for the enemy to be able to wander and move around the level at all, whether it's to chase the player character, to attack the player character, or just to wander around, we'll need to configure a navigation mesh for the level, because the navigation mesh effectively allows us to generate a mesh across the walkable surfaces of the level that will allow the NPC to walk around intelligently without bumping into obstacles. To achieve that, I need to access the navigation panel. But first of all, I want to select the environment mesh that we have. I need to make sure that it's static. And specifically, if I click on the drop down, although it appears outside of the recording window, there is a tick box that says navigation static. I need to make sure that is enabled, because if that is not enabled, then a navigation mesh will not be generated for this mesh here. Now, the next thing I want to do is to display the navigation mesh panel. To do that, I can choose Window, and then I can select Navigation, which is down here at the bottom of the menu. So Window, Navigation to display the navigation mesh window. Now, the next thing that I want to do is to switch to the Bake tab here and to configure the properties for the NPC agent. Now, by default, if I just click the Bake button here, you can see that we have this kind of blue mesh generated through the environment. And actually, it's not looking too bad in terms of representing the walkable areas of the level. You can see we've got the blue mesh along here. Notice that it has some kind of safety buffer margin between the mesh here at the center and the edges of the mesh. But notice here we get this broken portion. So we have a section here and a section here. Now, if we leave this broken portion intact, it simply means that NPC characters cannot walk off of this mesh and onto the other one. We need a complete seamless mesh across the environment. Now, the reason that this is happening right now is because it's taking the radius setting here for the agent, representing the size of an agent. And it's using that as a measuring tool away from the edges of the environment. So, for example, we have one edge here and one edge here. And because of the radius setting, it isn't enough to create a connection here for the mesh. So the way that we can fix this is simply by reducing the agent radius, as you can see on here, and then clicking Bake again. And now when I do this, notice this time we've got a much better navigation mesh. We've got this seamless connected mesh throughout the environment here. So I'm going to stick with a mesh of that setting. Now, for anything to be able to navigate intelligently around the navigation mesh, we need to assign it a navigation mesh component. So in this case, I want to select the NPC character here and then simply choose component. And then we have the option here, navigation, and I want to select NavMesgAgent. and assign that to this NPC character. Now, by default, you can see the settings are not quite right for the character. We've got a green cage surrounding this object. I'm going to reduce the radius to more narrowly match up with the radius of the character. And also the height is a bit too tall as well. So I'm going to reduce the height of the character to more closely match NPC character. And actually, that's looking pretty good. So effectively, this NavMesh agent represents the brain of this character that allows it to intelligently maneuver itself around the level.